For Inside Carolina, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and this is a new podcast to the Inside Carolina lineup, Up in the Rafters, where 2017 ACC Player of the Year and National Champion Justin Jackson and myself will be talking about all things Carolina basketball. Before we get started, though, I just wanted to say thank you for being here. Be sure you subscribe to Inside Carolina wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube so you never miss out on any of the content the team at IC puts out. The support doesn't go unnoticed on this end. Speaking of support, we want to support the people that support us. So that's why I've got to mention our friends over at Johnny T-Shirt. When it comes to Carolina apparel, they have everything that you could possibly want. The T-shirts, the jerseys, the hats, you name it, they will probably have it because it's great people and great customer service since it's locally owned and operated by alumni. You could visit them in person if you're going to be in Chapel Hill on Franklin Street or online at johnnytshirt.com. And don't forget, Inside Carolina premium subscribers save 10% off their orders. It's Up in the Rafters. As always, I'm joined by my guy, Justin Jackson. And Justin, before we get to UNC over this past week, I'm going to stall for a bit. I've got a question that the people want answered since All-Star Weekend is quickly approaching. If there was a three-point contest featuring yourself, your now teammate with the Suns, Cam Johnson, UNC's all-time three-point leader in Marcus Page, and then let's add Coach Davis and let's add somebody like Wayne Ellington. So you just got snipers all around. Who's taking home the crown?
Dang, bro. That's tough. I mean, I always have confidence in myself, but when you put a group together like that, I mean, Cam Johnson is shooting the freaking crap out of the ball right now. Coach Davis is like third all time in the league in three-point percentage. Marcus, obviously, he can knock down shots. I'm not even going to answer that question because I already know it's just going to get people on my heads. But I got to go with the most current. I'd probably say Cam. Cam is a freaking sniper, so I'd have to put Cam there.
I'd like to see that just because I think everybody is such gamers there where Cam might be the favorite coming in. He might be the betting favorite. All the money might be going on him, but I'm not counting out anybody from that group to take it home. Who gets hot?
Competitive spirit would kick in for sure.
And then I guess the other contest that's really popular during All-Star Weekend is the dunk contest. So how about in a dunk contest, I'm putting prime MJ, prime Vince Carter. Let's go JP Tokoto, who can jump his way out of a gym. And then you have to add Cole Anthony, who is in this year's version of the dunk contest. Kind of looking forward to seeing what he has in his bag. But who wins that Carolina dunk contest?
It's all those guys have bounce, but you cannot go against half man, half amazing, bro. You can't. What he did in his career in the dunk contest that he was in, like, you can't go against that. So you got to go with VC.
That's one where it's like the three-point shooting contest, anybody could kind of just get hot. The creativity, the bounce, it's over. It's over. I'm going with the gif of Vince Carter. Hard to go against him, but we open the podcast on a light note because we have to talk about the Duke game for Carolina, where it's another matchup against a quality opponent, and Carolina is out of the game almost from the jump, losing 87-67, where they're now 0-7 this year in the quad one games, which is going to be a huge factor in if this team even makes it to the NCAA tournament. What went so wrong for UNC in this game over the weekend so fast?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't able to watch the game live, but after watching the highlights, and I think the number one thing is when you get started off so slow against a good team like that, it's going to be an uphill battle and it's going to be hard for the rest of the game. At the end of the day, as much as, UNC fans and whoever don't want to admit it, Duke is one of the best teams in college basketball this year. And so when you're going into a game like that, knowing, the firepower that they have, you have to play from the jump. You can't play from behind the entire game. So I think that was one thing. I think another thing is, unfortunately, when you look at the play of the main players When you look at the play of Caleb and RJ, bad games happen, right? Like it's basketball. Bad games always happen. But going into a game of that caliber, you really need the majority of your key players to really step up and play well. And unfortunately, they had bad games during that game. And a guy like Griffin on the other side had a freaking career game against him. And so I think there was a bunch of things. I think the number one thing that they have to always remember is just to compete, right? It doesn't matter if you're hitting shots, doesn't matter if things are going your way or whatever. Just compete. Like that competitive spirit sometimes just keeps you in the game. And so I think that's the one thing they have to always keep in mind is, you know what, we're going to go out here whether we are on fire or we can't buy a bucket. Like we're going to continue to compete at all times. I think it's sometimes their competitive spirit kind of wavers, just kind of watching from the outside. So I think that's the one thing they need to make sure of.
People question why Hubert Davis started the game with Armando Bacot on Paolo Banchero, with Bacot picking up 2 early fouls. But we also saw in the second half when you switch a few of the matchups and you put Leaky on him, it's somebody like AJ Griffin going off for a career high, like you mentioned, 27 points. Then you take it a step further when you're looking at both of these rosters kind of, and you're looking at like something as simple as a mock draft. Duke has Banchero, they have Trevor Keels, they have AJ Griffin, all projected somewhere in the first round. And then you have a team like Carolina who right now it doesn't look like they have that much NBA talent. Can you explain why this matchup on paper is almost never going to be a good one for UNC, having played at the highest level and knowing that sometimes the guy across from you, if LeBron James is across from you, you could try to do everything you can, but at the end of the day, it's LeBron James across from you.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's just the game is a lot about matchups, right? And when you have a guy like Banchero, who is he's a matchup problem for everybody, right? He's 6'10", has guard skills, can play almost every position. That causes issues, right? I think one thing you gotta shout out Leaky for that second half of defense that he played on him. Obviously he's going top 3 in the NBA draft next year if he leaves. So the defense that he played on him in the second half was great. But the problem is when you switch, a guy like Leaky onto him, Armando's got to guard somebody else, and then Brady has to guard somebody else. So it just kind of causes some issues, and it's just matchup issues, right? I think back to the year that Carolina played against Texas A&M in the tournament, right? Like North Carolina was a great team that year, but they went up against 2 almost footers in Robert Williams, and then I can't remember the other guy's name that was down there for A&M. But the matchup was just a tough matchup. You had a Luke May at the 5, playing 6'8", 6'9" against a footer that's a lob threat, right? It's tough to play against that. So, maybe you mix in a zone. North Carolina has never really been a zone type defense. But maybe you mix up a zone. Maybe you mix up different looks to try to make their offense kind of, think about what they need to be doing as opposed to just letting them find the mismatch and then go after that. But I mean, I think a part of it is just the talent that Duke has. You have to tip your hat to the talent that they have. A guy like Banchero, Griffin, like those guys are problems when it comes to matchups. So hopefully they can kind of, figure it out and hopefully they've got games in between this game and the next one against Duke, but hopefully they can figure something out to kind of mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, I love that matchups point because it always makes me think back to both the 2016 and the 2017 UNC teams where I'm taking you guys almost up against anybody, but Virginia's coming to town. It's going to be a battle. I remember being at the 2016 ACC championship in DC against UVA in the final game, and that felt like a 12-round heavyweight slugfest where it was like, thank God you guys won that game. And it's like, how do you guys kind of flip your attention now to the tournament, knowing the effort it took to beat Tony Bennett and what he's trying to do in Charlottesville. But yeah, it's always interesting to see the matchups, and Duke, like you mentioned, you do have to kind of tip your hat for how well they do recruit and how much talent they're not only getting to Duke but putting in the NBA. And you said if Banchero leaves this year, he's going top three. I don't want to be the guy breaking the news, but I could almost guarantee you he's gone.
Hey, look, I'm gonna play the politically correct and say if he leaves. But yeah, whether he leaves this year, next year, whenever, he's definitely gonna be a top 3 pick, no doubt.
Yeah, and regardless of the matchups, you can from the outside looking in, you can expect a loss when you're up against elite NBA talent like Duke has, but there really isn't an excuse for how non-competitive Carolina has been in a majority of these losses this season, with that Duke game becoming the 4th game this season. The team has lost by 20 or more points, which hasn't happened since the 01-02 UNC team that went 8-20. Not the best company to be in when you're talking about the history of Carolina basketball. Then the frustrating part for fans and the program is that you watch a team like Virginia go into Cameron and then come out with a win, and you can't make the argument that Virginia is more talented than Carolina, since Carolina kind of rolled over them earlier this season. So if you're Carolina, how can this team play more to that talent level? Because something is going to have to change if this team wants to accomplish anything of significance when you mention the potential of postseason play.
Yeah, I mean, I think, even going back to like the team having, more NBA talent or more talent, right? I even think back to our year in 2017. I mean, we had great players and guys that are making money overseas and guys that are, making a good living off of basketball. But if you really look at our matchup, even against Duke, like Duke had Jason Tatum, they had Luke Kennard. I think Emil Jefferson played in the league for like a year or two. They had guys that, were in the NBA. And then you look at our team and, it was me. Now Theo's on a 2-way. And other than that, I guess Tony, right? Yeah. But if you really look at it, they had more NBA talent than we had on our team. And so I think the hardest thing is, and I think it's kind of been the argument all season, right? Like, this team has talent. Like, it's you can't debate that they do not have talent, right? They have guys that can play the game of basketball very well. It's that competitiveness that I feel like has to be brought up to that talent level. When you have guys like Caleb Love, you have guys like RJ, Armando, I think overall the last few games, the one thing that I have to give credit to is Leaky and how he's played the last few weeks, right? When you have guys that are talented in their position, your competitive spirit has to be there every single game, right? And when you see games, losing by 20 in all of your losses or most of your losses, like, that's more than just a talent issue, right? Like, I've seen very, like, not talented teams not lose by 20 points, right? It's, okay, are we going into this game to compete? Are we going into this game because we want to win? Or are we going into this game for the wrong reasons, right? Are we going into the game to get our own, try to get our average, get my double-double, whatever it might be? They have to keep that at all times. And I think if they can do that, like I said, they have the talent to make a run. But if you don't have, the heart and the drive to win games with that talent can only take you so far. So I think that's really what they have to focus on.
Yeah, and then the other question I had kind of from that Duke game for you is to set it up a bit, the only player for Carolina who came out looking ready to keep Carolina in this game with his offense, especially in the first half, was Brady Manek. However, the challenge with Manek is always going to be on the defensive end, where his matchup Griffin goes off with relative ease. You look at the Miami game, it's kind of been a trend for him. Wardenberg averages 7.8 points per game. He scores 21. Wake Forest, Laravia averages 15.1. He scores 31. And then, like we mentioned, Griffin, who averages 9.5 points per game, scores 27. For this Carolina team, there's no question they need Manic in this game for his offense and his ability on that end of the floor. But if you're Carolina, what can you do to potentially hide him or help him on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think a part of that definitely goes on Brady, right? Like Brady has to take the matchup serious. Not, when he goes into a game, whether it's a guy that averages 7 or it's a guy that, has been hot going into the game, like he has to take that as, okay, this is my matchup. I'm going to do everything I can to try to stop him or at least slow him down. Because like you said, they have to have Brady. Like Brady is a part of their offense that they have to have. I think another part of it is, and this kind of goes to kind of the overall like look of the team, there has to be a group effort on defense, right? And whether their defense is a deny defense, pressure defense, whatever, sometimes you have to make up for the issues and the problems that are being caused by maybe one guy guarding the ball, right? Like you have to be able to cover up. If AJ Griffin drives right past Brady Manic, you have to be able to say, okay, I'm coming in because I'm going to help my teammate, right? And if they kick it out or they swing the ball again, make another great play, then so be it. But I'm not going to leave my teammate just out to dry. And so I think that kind of has to be like a mindset just throughout the game. Like if a guy is able to hold his own, then cool, he's on his own. But if they start seeing that, AJ Griffin starts getting going or, Laravia starts getting going, it's like, okay, like let's help him out a little bit. We're not just going to let him get scored on 4 straight times and not come over and help. But I mean, a lot of that goes on to whatever Coach Davis's defensive schemes are, and for us, we're just kind of on the outside, kind of giving like our insight. But whatever coach says, like those are the schemes that they're playing in, and that's what they've got to do.
Sometimes in these losses where you put so much emotion into the game, like a Duke game, it's easy to let a bad loss beat you twice. But Carolina responds on the road and finds a way to beat Clemson. It wasn't pretty at times, but what were your biggest takeaways watching that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think, because we're doing a podcast and I'm not a coach or a player, I can talk about the referees a little bit. I'm just going to be completely honest. There was some bad officiating going on in that game, on both sides. Like it was just some bad calls, man. But that was one take, bro. That's one of those things where it's like you tell your team you got to keep playing through it. But sometimes those guys in black and white can affect the game in ways that you can't really play through. I think it was a little sloppy. I think their play was a little, it wasn't a collective unit necessarily. But I think, like you said, at the same time, it's hard to get blown out and to get your mind back right to go back out there and play, and get a win. And even though it was ugly, all of them aren't going to be pretty, right? They're not all going to be pretty. But the fact that they were able to buckle down at the end of that game and get a bucket at the end of the game to get the win, sometimes you just, we'll take it, right? And we'll move on. And so you gotta give them some credit as far as just making the plays down the stretch they need to make. But they got to clean it up just a little bit.
This game and the Louisville game, it's almost more surprising at this point when the referees are good. And I forget what coach I was either talking to or I heard say this, but they said 99% of refs are good. I just happen to get the 1% every time.
Man, the tough thing is, even though I'm sitting here saying it was some bad refereeing, the tough thing about a referee, man, the referee is never right, ever, right?
Somebody's going to be mad.
Yeah, somebody's going to be mad. But I don't know. I think there's just times when I watch it, and whether it's like the referee is trying to have some power or whatever it is, at the end of the day, referees, like, people aren't there to watch the referees, right? They're just not. Like, as much as we appreciate you and we need you in the game of basketball, like they're not here to watch you. So, and maybe they just maybe they had an off day. You know what I'm saying? Just like players have off days, referees can have off days. Maybe that, like you said, maybe it was that 1% that had an off day that night, right? So, I don't know, but I'm glad that they were able to fight through it and make a play down the stretch.
You say that the fans and everybody there aren't there to watch the referees, but TV Teddy Valentine, he's never gotten that message. Everybody, you're paying price of admission to see him perform, but you're a nice guy. What's the most mad you've ever been at a ref in a game?
In college, I never really got too mad, to be honest. I think honestly, this year playing in the G League for a little bit, I think that's probably the most that I've gotten irritated. Because just like the G League is considered a developmental league, like the referees, it's also like they're trying to make their way up to the NBA or, trying to get there. And so there's a lot of times, but I mean, I haven't gotten a technical
Ever.
I got one technical in high school, man, and it was a fluke technical, to be honest with you.
A misunderstanding.
I was talking a little loud to my coach. I was talking about the ref a little loud to my coach, but I was talking to my coach. I wasn't talking to the referee. They weren't a part of the conversation.
Eavesdropping.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Nosy. You know what I mean? But yeah, I haven't gotten too crazy with the refs, but I've seen some players that they just can't take it anymore, man. They gotta let them know.
In that Clemson game, Caleb Love was pretty big down the stretch for Carolina, making a couple of big plays late, especially the last play of the game where he drives and dumps it down to Brady Manick for the game-winning basket. What do you think it says about Caleb Love's mental toughness to make those plays late at the end, despite having 5 turnovers, another so-so shooting night, and it was a moment where he easily could have gotten in his head for some of the plays he had earlier?
I mean, I think it says a lot. I think it says like his maturity has been, he's still maturing in ways that maybe last year or even earlier in the season, he wouldn't have made that drop off pass. Maybe he would have tried to finish. I think for me, if I were to give, because I've been in the same situations that, guys like Caleb Love or whoever have been in, right? Like the one thing I would tell him is just go hoop. Like just go play the game of basketball that you've played for 19 years of your life, right? Because at the end of the day, the more free and the more like not thinking that Caleb Love can play, the better he's going to be at all times. And for this team to go where I think they can go, he has to play that way, right? He has to play with a free mind. He has to play not worrying about if he misses this shot or if he turns the ball over here, and I think when players play that way, they end up not turning the ball over. They end up hitting more shots, right? Because the game of basketball, when you think too much, it's hard to do some things out there on the court. And so that'd be my one thing to Caleb is like, man, just go hoop. Like, go be you. Go be Caleb Love. And when you're Caleb, we've seen it, throughout this season. When he's Caleb Love, he's a pretty good player, right? And he leads this team and gets this team to where they need to go. And, I think if he can do this kind of down this stretch and kind of lead this team through this next stretch of games, then they could find themselves in a place where they want to be.
You mentioned kind of freeing up Caleb Love from like a mental perspective, and one of the ways that I think Hubert Davis is trying to do that is lighten the mood in the huddle. And there were a couple of quotes from his post-game press conference against Clemson that I wanted to share with you, where he says in the huddle they were a little out of control, and I was trying to calm them down and just say, look, guys, we've been in this situation before. Just last week, I made a joke to them. I said, look, guys, all we need to do is score and get a stop, and we win. Let's win this game in regulation so we can get home at a good hour of the night. And then when he was talking to Caleb Love, his final instructions to him, he said, If you want to make a shot, you're allowed to make one. I give you permission to score. And then he said, I just make a play. If you're open, shoot the ball and make it. If somebody is open, just make a pass. How big is that for this team that they do have somebody like Coach Davis trying to lighten the mood where when basketball is a game where those late game situations can get really hectic and really stressful?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's huge, and that's just Coach Davis being Coach Davis, right? He was always like that, even as an assistant. Um, and I think that's big for the team whenever you have the guy at the helm, keeping everybody calm, and keeping everybody collected, kind of through those times that maybe are, the team's making a run, or it's the end of the game, we're down one or whatever, and we got to go win the game. And I think the team should feed off of that, right? Because if your head coach is talking like that and acting like that, then why put pressure on yourself to go out there and do something that you know probably have done a million times? Why are you going to put pressure on yourself to go do that? I think that's what they have to do, and I think you've seen it in games. You've seen it against NC State, right? You've seen it where they go out there and they're just hooping, like they're just playing basketball. All the X's and O's, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, they have it in the back of their mind, like their schemes and things like that. But just the way the ball's moving, the way they're making shots, the way they're playing defense, they're just out there playing basketball, right? They're not thinking about, oh, I've missed the last 2 or 3 shots. I've got 2 bad turnovers. My man just got past me, right? They're just on to the next play. And when they play like that, they look pretty good, right? Like that talent starts to show through a little bit. And hopefully they can continue to try to work on that mentality of let's just go hoop, right? Let's just go play basketball and let's try to get to where we want to be.
We'll see how Carolina does responding to their latest win on the road at Clemson with the team heading back to Chapel Hill. They play Saturday, 2 p.m. against Florida State in the Dean Dome, and then they also play Wednesday, 8 p.m. against Pittsburgh, still in Chapel Hill. Justin, we'll be back next week to break it all down, but always appreciate the time.
Always a pleasure, brother.